Jack the Baboon worked on the railway system in South Africa for 9 years without ever making a single mistake. Hi there everyone, Mohammed Najmi here, and today I have for you a weird sort of an episode. It's about Jack the Baboon, who worked on the railway station, a railway system in South Africa. I'm going to expand on the short fact of this week that we have had about this Jack. So let's get into it. So what is the story of Jack? Well, the story of Jack first starts with James. James Jumper Wide, as he was called. Jumper was his nickname that was given to him. So when James Jumper Wide worked for the Cape Town Port Authority railway services, he developed a habit of leaping from one railway car to the other, even while the trains were moving. This was during 1877, so the concept of health and safety wasn't really embedded at that time, especially in South Africa. So one day in that year of 1877, as it would have been inevitable, he misjudged his jump by a tiny little bit and he fell under the moving train, unfortunately. And James survived, though. The train had ruined both of his legs at the knee. You can imagine those heavy steel wheels crushing his legs, basically. And then, he survived, but he found himself unemployed, basically. He begged the Cape Railway government for a job, but to no avail. He wouldn't be given a job in his condition. Not one for giving up, Jumper Wide, was he made himself a pair of peg legs, like those wooden legs, and a trolley to help himself get around. Now this fortunately was good enough for the railways, and he got a new, less active job as a signalman. But he was still having a bit of trouble getting around. Obviously, you can imagine, it wasn't that innovative enough, that helpful enough actually for him to get around, even with his peg legs and a self-made trolley. So this is where Jack comes in to the story. So what happens is, a few years later, around 1880, Wide visited a market in Jotunheim, I think so it's pronounced, and while there he witnessed this baboon, a very young baboon, who was driving an ox wagon into the market, like acting as a used to call them oxen leader. So White introduced himself to the owner of the baboon and offered to buy him. The owner was reluctant to sell his favorite pet, as the animal was so intelligent and helpful, but eventually he took pity on the disabled man and sold it to him. White named him Jack. Not really sure what his name was before that. Maybe he didn't have a name, who knows. So the owner now told Jumper that the baboon was incredibly smart and a great worker, but only if he got a bit of Cape brandy every night. So this baboon was actually, quite enjoying his alcohol, and he would be willing to do work if he was given a tot of Cape brandy. So if his nighttime beverage were missed, the baboon would sulk the following day and refuse to do anything. Wide Jumper only forgot once in all the years that followed, and after a day of Jack's sullen behavior and refusal to work, he never forgot again. So Jumper lived about half a mile from the train station, and so the first thing he did was he trained Jack to pull his small trolley along the track. You see, so that he could move along to do his work. The baboon pushed the trolley up the small hill and would gleefully jump on board for the faster downhill sections. The baboon also learned how to lift the trolley on and off the tracks, and was soon helping with household chores, such as cleaning up rubbish, sweeping the floors, and rolling old condemned sleepers to the kitchen to be used as firewood. It's quite an intelligent animal. you would say, and quite an helpful animal, especially for him as he was disabled. So what happens next then? The two of them soon became inseparable. As you can imagine, he had a comfort animal, so to speak. One of the jobs that was given to Jumper was to unlock the points that allowed train drivers or engineers to access coal sheds. Simple enough, when a locomotive driver approached, they would give full blast on the train whistle, and Jumper, using his crutches, would then hobble out and hand over a special key. Jack had watched this happen a few times, and one day, on hearing the four whistles, the baboon took the key, ran over and handed it to the astonished driver. From that point on, that became his job. That was his job. As the months wore on, Jumper started to train Jack on how to change the signals and what levers to pull depending on how many whistles the train engineers blew. This is very amazing, actually. If you think about it from our perspective, we would say, well, it's a simple task, but it's actually not when you see it from the perspective of an animal. He intuitively picked up these things because he was that intelligent and that willing to help, and had created a bond with Jumper. With close supervision, Jumper watched the baboon perform flawlessly. Now, there's a book as well called The Railway Signal. Recommend reading it. Very enlightening. Within it, Jumper Wide, he has said that he trained the baboon to such perfection that he was able to sit in his cabin stuffing birds, etc., while the animal, the baboon, which was chained up outside, pulled all the levers and points. Now, as it were to happen, the locals soon found out about what was happening. Many would come and watch Jack at work, giving out keys and pulling levers. The vast majority were impressed at how well the baboon did the job. However, as things happen, one day, someone who wasn't from that local area, he spotted Jack, and obviously he wasn't overjoyed about the situation because of the safety implications, as you can imagine, that would come from it. After all, he was an animal. And the story got out of that local area, and he was popular with the locals, but not everyone outside that locality was actually impressed. The story is like, on one occasion, a prominent lady traveling from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth saw to her horror that the signals in the train yard were being changed by a baboon. When executives in Cape Town received her indignant report, their first reaction was disbelief. When she insisted that her account was true, they sent a delegation of inspectors to Uitenhage. Jumper and Jack were dismissed from duty. They were cancelled. But fortunately, the story does not end there. The inspectors and railway delegation decided to challenge Jack with a series of rigorous tasks, as Jumper tried to persuade the inspectors that together him and Jack can do the job capably, right? So they said, okay, well, there will be a set of tasks that we need to see, and we need to measure your ability, your and your animal's ability to actually perform the job, and your intelligence, your animal's intelligence to do it. So secret instructions were given to a locomotive driver, and all assembled over there to watch, like, okay, what's gonna happen? Let's see what happens. Now, each time the driver tooted his horn a set number of times, Jack leaped into action and without fail pulled the correct lever. Amazing, isn't it? Not only did Jack impress by passing with a perfect score, but he also looked in each direction to double check the right lever was pulled. Now, this is even more amazing. The signal had changed and the trains were on the right track. So he was checking. He was double checking if he had pulled the right lever and if the signals had actually changed and the trains were on the right track or not. This is a higher level of intelligence than you would expect from an animal just performing a task. Jack had passed the test with flying colors, as you would expect, and both he and Jumper were re-employed. Now, this time he was actually employed, which is important. Not only did the baboon officially become known as Jack the signalman, but he also got 20 cents a day, and every week got half a bottle of beer. He even got an official employment number. In 1890, after a decade of work, Jack sadly passed away after contracting tuberculosis, TB. He had worked as a railway signalman for 9 years and he'd never made a mistake. Obviously, as you can imagine, James White, Jumper, he was, inconsolable. He was deeply, deeply saddened. The friendship and bond between the two was described by Superintendent George B. Howe, who paid a visit that year, a couple of months before Jack's passing, as I have only just returned from a visit to Jack. It was very touching to see his fondness for his master. As I drew near, they were both sitting on the trolley, the baboon's arms around his master's neck, the other stroking Jumper's face. Jack's skull is actually in Albany Museum in Grahamstown, South Africa. So there you have it. That's the story of Jack the signalman who worked for the South African railway system in the latter part of the 19th century. What an incredible story. To show you the untold intelligence or the capability of intelligence that some animals can hold, and who knows, probably in the future can evolve to be more than what they are right now. But the bond between animals and humans, it's actually quite beautiful when it is done, with the best of intentions. I hope you all enjoyed listening to this episode. If you did, please share it with others, and if not done so, please consider subscribing to this podcast. Until next time, take care, be good, and thank you so much for listening.